I call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. First order of business is the approval of minutes for February 27th, open session, and February 27th, executive session.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Pollak, seconded by Mr. De Silva. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have one correspondence from the mayor. Says, Dear Chairman Pilata and school committee members, due to the uncertainty of state funding for the North Providence School Department, I am respectfully requesting that all non-essential hiring and spending be placed on hold until all parties, administration and council, have the opportunity to review your budget requests for 2019-2020. Please be advised that this request will also be in effect for all municipal departments. Please place this on the agenda under public comment. The letter has been read, so noted, and we will make every attempt to abide by the mayor's request. Moving on to item number 6, Superintendent's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I would ask our Residency and Truancy Officer, Mr. Massey, to please approach the podium for a presentation to the school committee regarding issues that we would like him to discuss regarding residency and truancy.
Good evening. So I was asked to come, I believe, tonight to give a report out, and I'll start with my residency information. So far this year, I have conducted 127 residency inquiries thus far, compared to 132 residency inquiries that were conducted for the last school year. 35 students have been withdrawn as a result of residency inquiries that I have investigated thus far, compared to 38 students who were withdrawn last school year. I'll give you 2 examples of residency inquiries. An out-of-district student was revealed that he was living in another district. The other district assumed the tuition as well as busing costs for the students as a result of this inquiry. The tuition for the placement was approximately $7,000 per month plus busing cost. And the second example is after a lengthy residency inquiry with our partners from the North Providence Police, it was revealed that an out-of-district student, along with a regular ed student, were not North Providence residents. The district petitioned RIDE for a residency hearing, in which RIDE ruled in our favor, which resulted in a savings of $210 a day for the out-of-district student, as well as the cost of educating the regular ed students, which is approximately $15,000 a year. As of today, there are 20 residency cases that are pending that I've investigated so far this year. Any questions on residency?
Any questions? Mr. Pollak?
Good evening. I'm just, I understand, at least my understanding is your workload for just yourself, you have quite a heavy workload. Is that true?
Just myself? Is that the question?
Yeah, just for one person.
Yes, sir.
Do you feel that you could use assistance to assist you?
Well, you know, as the numbers indicate, the residency inquiries have gone up, you know, thus far this year. I anticipate with the new schools opening that there'll be extra added inquiries that were going to have to be conducted. So I'd leave that up to the school committee to decide whether additional people are needed.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Josie?
The mayor offered some assistance not too long ago, I believe, to you or to us from the police department. Have you been able to utilize that assistance?
Yeah, the police department are wonderful partners. They help me out with a lot of stuff that I need to do as far as residency inquiries go. Yeah, I have nothing, everything excellent to say about them and their cooperation with helping me out.
So where would your overload be? In the court system? Would that be the problem? Or would it be, obviously I'm going to use the word chasing residency.
So I'm going to give you my truancy stuff numbers too, and then it's a combination of both. So the numbers will indicate, again, that the truancy petitions I've filed this year have gone up. The number of open cases in court have gone up. And there are a couple of incentives that I'd like to, that I'm looking at to hopefully bring to North Providence to address some attendance issues in the elementary level. So if that turns out to be come true, that would obviously make the elementary numbers go up.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to hearing that.
Do you get most of your referrals at elementary, middle, or high school?
For the residency stuff,
Mhm.
I would say it's pretty evenly spread across the district. I don't keep statistics as far as you know, how it's broken down, but I would say it's pretty even across the district.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
So do you want me
So
to
continue
report
to
on the
report,
truancy
sure.
stuff? Okay, so far this year, 28 truancy petitions were filed for students who attend the high school and the 2 middle schools, compared to 28 petitions that were filed all of last school year. 4 complaints have been filed against parents for elementary school students. I have a total of 46 open cases in family court between the truancy court and school, the cases on the formal juvenile and adult calendars. 56 truancy intervention meetings have been conducted so far this year, compared to 45 meetings that were conducted all of last year, and 20 home visits for attendance-related issues thus far. Currently, a magistrate comes to the truancy diversion program every Thursday at the middle school, 2 middle schools and the high school. And for cases that don't do well in that diversion program, they're scheduled for hearings in court on Wednesdays and Fridays, which is held downtown in the Garrahy complex. And speaking about that incentive, there's a program which Family Court is currently piloting in Warwick and Cranston, where they're allowing districts to file a civil complaint against the parents of the elementary school students who have attendance issues. That also is held within a district school, and it allows the truancy magistrate, if they deem necessary, to get services involved for that family, which hopefully would address some of the attendance issues at the elementary level. I think it would be a good proactive approach to assist the families that struggle with attendance issues, and hopefully we can work that out with the family court and bring that to North Providence.
Set. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I may. So how do we go about bringing that? Do you need our approval? Do you need us to make a motion to do it? Or do you need to investigate it yourself some more before you bring it to us? Because I have no problem making a motion to go forward with that if it's going to help with attendance.
Yeah, I think I'm going to research it a little bit more, find out the fine-tune the particulars. At that point, I'm sure we'd sit down with the superintendent, have a meeting to see if that's something that they would look at going forward. But I don't know. I'm shooting to start maybe for September of next year, so we have a little bit of time before I think that might need to happen.
Well, thank you for your report, Mr. Massey, and thank you for your hard work.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. Thank you.
Just a comment for the school committee. So Mr. Massey does an excellent job. He's very thorough, works nights, weekends, above and beyond the school day, contacts me with various issues. Very dogged, very thorough, very knowledgeable. Works very well with the police department as a former policeman himself. He's very attuned to the various, for lack of a better term, scams that people try to pull and perpetrate to enter the school system. But just a little bit of a background, this position formerly, a number of years ago, was a full-time position. So Mr. Massey does this job at a maximum of 30 hours. So as our population has changed and grown, and as our new schools are opening, you know, I really do strongly believe that having a part-time truancy officer is inadequate for a district of this size. So when you add in the truancy court that is now in North Providence in terms of both at the high school and the middle school, and the focus on attendance and as far as accountability and the need to be on top of that issue, I do believe that we do need some additional help, and that's why the proposed budget does include the request for an additional 20 hours or a part-time person for truancy for the 2019-20 fiscal year.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. No, Mr. Massey, I just want to thank you for coming in. I'm actually one of the people that asked to have you come in. I think it's very important, especially with the 2 new schools that are going to be opening up, to kind of send a message for people that don't live in the town, that aren't approved to go to the schools here, that it's not going to be tolerated. So I want to thank you for coming in to speak to us tonight.
Next item on the superintendent's report, I'm asking the school committee to approve the newly created position of a full-time athletic director. Just some background, as part of the expiring teacher contract, there was an MOU that was signed by the prior school committee chair, approved by the school committee, that upon expiration of this contract, the position of a full-time athletic director would be created to replace the current system that we have, which is 2 part-time directors. Essentially, the position is a financial wash in terms of being essentially cost neutral. So we did devise a job posting that would fit the position that was called upon, and I've submitted that to you, and I'm asking for the school committee to approve that posting so that we can get it out soon, and then conduct interviews, and then have someone appointed prior to the end of the school year so that athletics don't miss a beat in terms of preparation for the summer.
Is that motion by Mr. Marciano? Seconded by Mr. De Silva. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Next item on the superintendent's report, I'm requesting approval of the job description and posting for the elementary literacy innovation specialist. And again, some background on this. This is essentially the certified librarian position. So currently, obviously we have a library at every school in the district, but we have 2 schools who currently, well, there are 2 positions that are vacant right now. We advertised numerous times for library certified librarians, and we were unable to attract anybody. There's only one program in the state, I believe it's the University of Rhode Island, that has 12 people in the program that are producing certified librarians. So we have filled those positions for the current school year with substitute teachers so that we could keep the libraries open and running. And so interim superintendent O'Brien worked on a proposal, and we met with RIDE recently, and they did give us approval for an alternative certification for this position should we not be able to find librarians for the 2019-20 school year going forward. So these are not new positions, they are existing positions. They're librarian positions that are just simply being renamed. And essentially this position would be that it would be, if we could not find a certified librarian, we could hire a certified elementary teacher who would have a specific skill set in literacy and also technology. And I did submit to the school committee a schematic design of what the library would look like under the new configuration. So I'm asking for the school committee to approve this job description, and again, this would be for the 2019-20 school year. We would keep the substitutes in the current positions. We would post these positions with a librarian certification preferred, but again, if we are not able to attract anybody, RIDE would give us the certification to hire somebody who fits the job description with an elementary certification as presented in your posting.
Well, my wife's a librarian. Second.
Motion by Mr. Marciano, seconded by Mr. De Silva. Are there any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Next item on the agenda, in the superintendent's report, is the kindergarten screening process proposal, and I will turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Louise Seitzinger.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So this is something we proposed last year. We actually met with the teachers last year, the kindergarten teachers, to discuss the possible screening process happening. And this is something that has been happening in districts for many years, so it's not something new. And as a matter of fact, it's been approved through the commissioner, through the regulations for a long time. And that regulation provides up to 5 of the 180 required school days to be set aside at the kindergarten level for the purpose of screening kindergarten students, but it could also be for orientation, parents and students, parent-teacher conferences, etc. So I think that it's well worthwhile. It's something also that would be explained to parents in a May orientation with parents, where we learn about the program and such, and also students would visit the schools before school started, so they would get comfortable with the environment and they wouldn't know particularly who their teacher was at that time, but they would get comfortable with the environment as much as possible. So we established protocols with the teachers. Currently what we use is a document that's pretty standard. It's not as comprehensive as what I'm proposing, and the teachers do not feel that it's been as comprehensive. They really support the document that we've created together. They feel that they'll get the information they need before students are placed in classes. So typically what happens is students are placed in a class, teachers get their classroom, and they don't know a lot about the students. And they do screenings, but it takes time. We also get subs for them at the beginning of the year. They do the screenings that they typically have. So they felt that proactively doing the screening process, the 2 days, in this case, before school starts, we schedule half-hour meetings. The students come in, so they're not attending school per se for those 2 school days. They come in with their parent, do the assessment. A parent has a questionnaire. They're not required to fill out the answers on the questionnaire. I haven't found anybody who didn't in my previous experience, but we found it to be a very comprehensive process. So by the end of that process, teachers can now look at the students, and again, it's one piece of data, it's not everything, but they have good information to form their classes so that we can support the students in the best way. And they're just, we're asking them is developmentally appropriate. It's about things like writing their name, pencil grasp, identification of shapes and colors, letters, capital letters, lowercase letters, etc. And so after all the students, like I said, have been screened, a decision's made about classes and the best placement possible, because we're thinking about supports as far as whether there's some special education support, other kinds of supports for those students. So the idea is to create the best balanced, the most balanced supportive classroom environments for our students. So I see it as a proactive type of situation. I don't see it as a negative, and I will tell you from my experience as an elementary principal, it was probably the best academic school year that we had for those students, and the teachers that I had at my school they felt it was a very supportive process. They felt that they were able to really start day one with their children and support them in the best way possible.
Discussion?
Mr. Picard?
So I am not in agreement with the screening that happens before students begin school. One, because it's in an unnatural environment so they're not with their peers, they've never met the adult before. And also as an elementary principal, as someone who also taught first grade and who has a lot of experience in education, what happens oftentimes is that child becomes anxious and is unable to attend to a task for 30 minutes with an adult they have never met before, and it can actually increase anxiety and give you a false assessment of the child. What I think would work much better is if we begin to look at the pre-Ks our kids come from, or who doesn't come from pre-K right from home, and you can think about providing our parents with opportunities of what kinds of things we would look for students to come to school ready to know. We do a lot of that work across the state. I think that would be a more natural setting. I also know as kindergarten teachers that the ability to have students in a classroom, they actually design activities that do just this very thing without having to have an appointment for 30 minutes. And I want all of you to think about a 5-year-old for 30 minutes with an adult they've never met before. And what I would be cautious of is the fact that oftentimes We're going to now, you heard Ms. Singer say, we're going to group the students, possibly special education. And oftentimes the phone calls I get from our parents is, we're quick to do things with special education. We're quick to group our kids. We're quick to make examples without having enough information. I think, you know, I'm not a big proponent of testing. I understand why we have to do it. I understand the purpose of benchmarking and screening. But I also think in a natural environment with their peers, when teachers get to design activities that are more productive in a natural setting with their peers, will get you more valuable data than doing it with one separate adult. So, and if you look across the country in schools that have much better outcomes than we do, it's built into the pre-Ks so that you're that pre-K through 12 environment as opposed to waiting until they're coming through the door. And again, my recommendation would have been, we've already sent out school calendars. If this was going to happen, this conversation needs to happen before school calendars are approved. I still would have said no, but I think that it would have, parents have already now making decisions, right? They're thinking through, they know when the first day of school is, so now you're giving a change to that again. But again, I don't feel that, and I not only my feel, but if you look up in the NCE reports around the way you screen students, the best valuable data is formative assessments done within the classroom setting with the teacher that they have a relationship with.
Louise, can you just explain by bullet point the difference between what is in place and what you're proposing?
I think the main difference is that it's more comprehensive. So this is where they have like it's a few-page document, and they do it after the kids come in, as Gina mentioned. The kids come in and they screen afterwards. We just tried to create something that would glean a little more comprehensive data and information about the students so that we could support them and we could differentiate and individualize. You know, that's how it was viewed. It wasn't viewed as in any negative kind of way. And we looked at currently what we had, and the teachers felt that we could do a better job with the screening process, and that's what we did. So we collaborated, we looked at other districts and what they had, and that's what we created.
If I can just follow up with Dr. Pilata's question, I think also what he's looking for is like operationally, how does the screening work currently, and how would it change under this format? My understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, currently we start school, first day of school, and the kids are screened within the school year, within the school day.
Yeah,
So
yeah, they're not.
The new proposal would sort of delay the start of school for a couple of days. Is that what you're looking for, Dr.
It starts the first day of school. It's the same day. The difference is that they're coming in with their parent, you know, for this. And I want to clarify too that it's not necessarily going to take up to a half hour. It really depends on the situation. And certainly, if a child is anxious in any way or showing any signs of stress, we would not follow through with that. So I think that, again, I can speak to the experience of doing it too, and as a primary level teacher myself, I think that you need to look at the individual situation, but in most cases, if the child has visited the school and they're comfortable, but we certainly are not here to stress anyone out. That's not the purpose of it. I think the idea, like I said, currently what we do is they come into school regular time, they wait a little bit, and then they do their assessments, and we get subs for them for that time. The difference is, we're not getting a substitute. We're doing it as they come in at the beginning of the year for those 2 days, and then when they come the following week, they're ready to go. And they would get a call, they would get a phone call from the teacher saying, you know, that child's in their class.
So you formulated the instrument based on collaboration with other districts?
Well, with our teachers. I had visited other districts, my prior district, because we were implementing a full-day K program at that time. So yes, I looked at other districts' data and screens.
To Mrs. Picard's point about the calendar, how would that be dealt with?
Well, they're starting the same day. The difference is that we'd have to let them know in May that they would be they would be signing up for appointments. So when they come to that May orientation, we'd have sign-up sheets and let them know that they would be coming. But it is a change, as you said, into the calendar. But they're actually coming on school still opens on those days for those kids. It's just a little bit different for the kindergarten.
Just another point. So if we have a kindergartner that comes in September 19th, who's screening them?
Oh, it would be a teacher.
In the classroom, correct? I'll make a motion to reject the proposal as submitted and review to try to think through a coordination that will help bring in our pre-K programs, look at where they're coming from, and really think about it more comprehensively as opposed to a one-time shot. Because I do think we could do this well. I just don't think there's enough time to be thoughtful about it at this point of the year.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Mr. De Silva seconded the motion. Further discussion?
If I may. So, I understand the wanting to screen them and see what they can do, but it's kindergarten. And it seems to me if they're part of the school community, and we welcome them as part of the school community, then on the first day of school, they should all show up. And I don't think they're all applying to Harvard or Yale that week, so I think we have some time to find out what they can and cannot do. I just think it's more confusing to have, and not every parent can make an appointment. So I think it's more confusing to say, okay, you're going to come in, but for the first 3 days of school, you're going to come in for half an hour, or 2 days of school, however long this is going to take, district-wide. And then there's the bus issue. How many kids are going to be bused? How many of those Maryville kids are going to be going to Wayland or Stephen only? That's a haul for some of those people, and, you know, that's why we provide busing. So I'm inclined to not support it, and I think Mrs. Picard is right in terms of coordinating with our preschool, and also, you know, we always talk about professional development. There's got to be ways of screening children in classrooms that we can find through research and find through best practices that would make this happen during the school day.
Mr. Chairman,
That's my opinion.
discussion.
Mr. Marciano?
Yeah, assistant superintendents, can this be fine-tuned a little bit so make it more palatable for people on the committee?
I'm happy to work with pre-K and our early childhood coordinator on looking at pre-K. I know they do a lot of screenings, obviously, at the pre-K level, too. But we can work together and re-examine this.
And come back with and fine-tune this one on those lines. Okay.
Happy to do that.
Well, I think in order for that to happen, Mrs. Picard and Mr. De Silva have to withdraw their motions. If you wish to have her come back with more information, we'd have to make a motion to table that. So I'll have to ask Mrs. Picard if she's willing to withdraw her motion.
I would prefer to keep my motion on the table for this year and not approve it because I think it's late in the year to do this. That's why I'm going to keep my motion on the table that we do not move forward with this for the 1920 school year.
Okay, so the motion stands. There's still a second by Mr. De Silva?
What I think you're trying to say is we should table this to next month and see what comes across our
I think that was Mr. Marciano's suggestion.
Intention,
But
yeah.
in order to do that,
right.
you have to withdraw your motion. Or Mrs. Picard
I
has
can
to
amend the
withdraw her
motion
motion.
to say that we reject it for the 1920 school year, but look at the possibility of bringing back for the 2021 school year in a more comprehensive approach. I have to say that coming back to families at the end of April, even now, I don't think it's responsible.
If I could just add, I do concur. If we table this and come up with a fine-tuned but new process in April, and then we have the orientation for kindergarten taking place a few weeks after that, and all of the redistricting that we have going on and all the scrambling going on in a lot of the schools, this might be something where it might even be too late now, but it certainly would be a bear to take on at that point. So my recommendation would be, I know Mrs. Seitzinger and the principals and the teachers really did work thoughtfully and carefully and over a long period of time on this, and then with the transition and the interim superintendent and everything that was occurring, it was not something that was moved forward in a timely manner because of all the issues that were occurring in the district. So I think at this point, the wise thing to do is to go back to the drawing board as Mr. De Silva, Mrs. Picard, and Mr. Marciano suggested, but with a new proposal that we look at in the fall for the following school year. I would not be comfortable bring a new proposal to you at the April meeting.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor by Mrs. Picard and seconded by Mr. De Silva. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, that motion is basically what Joe had just indicated, right, more or less in his presentation here, that it's going to be fine-tuned and...
Yeah, I think Mrs. Picard was comfortable with that, correct?
Okay, that's fine,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah, I think Mr. Seitzinger can go back with the teachers and administrators and also involve the pre-K teachers and Mr. Radcliffe and come up with something that incorporates some of the feedback that we received tonight from the school committee. And I thank you for the work that was put in. Unfortunately, with the circumstances that occurred in the district over the last several months, this is something that occurred at the 11th hour. That
I understand. Thank you very much.
next item on the superintendent's report is the redistricting update. So I'm going to report on 3 components. The first is the appeals component, which the appeals deadline ended March 22nd, although some are still coming in. So the appeals committee has met for several hours. We're still in the process of thoroughly examining all of the appeals that we have. We have currently over 110, 120 appeals that have come in. We want to look at them thoroughly and thoughtfully, and we want to try to accommodate as many families as we can. Knowing, of course, though, that we also have contractual class size limitations and enrollment limitations and size and space limitations to also consider. So we want to be very thoughtful with this process. We're anticipating that notification letters should be completed and sent out by the end of this week, and families should start receiving them early next week. So that's the update on the appeals component. Regarding the transportation plan, Dr. Pilata and myself and Mr. Feroli, Mr. Nahijian, members of the bus company, and all of the secretaries and clerks at the central office that have a hand in transportation, we all met collectively to speak to Durham, the 2 local supervisors, and also the supervisor from Connecticut. So they had 3 representatives at that meeting, and we outlined for them our expectations, the timelines, and exactly what it is that we need so that we have enough time to be thoughtful about our transportation routes. Our goal is to get a draft of a transportation plan sometime in mid-April, and to have that plan brought before the school committee at our April school committee meeting. And I do want to say publicly that Durham assured us repeatedly and clearly that they would meet our expectations and they would meet our timelines. We did remind them of some of the things that have occurred in the past and some of the things that continue to occur, and that thus far the whole redistricting process has gone remarkably well. Yeah. And we don't want busing or Durham to be the last leg or the component that puts a glitch in what thus far has been a very professionally run and successful community endeavor. So they assured us that they will be able to meet our timelines and our expectations, so hopefully we'll have something for you at the April meeting. And the last piece of this is the staffing plan, which has come about as a result of the redistricting. The entire Maryville staff has to be displaced. That list is going to be approved by the school committee shortly. And then a number of positions in the district are also affected by the restaffing. So we've met for several hours with HR and the union and the administrators, and we are putting the final touches on a process that's going to occur to allow us to post the positions very shortly and then fill them in an expedient manner that allows us to adhere to the contract and also hopefully put the best qualified people in the best positions in the best interests of students. So we have about 30 positions that we anticipate are going to be posted very soon, and then that process will unfold during the month of April and May as well. And as a side note, I do want to thank, he is here in the audience, I do want to thank Mr. Cicerone. He's spent a lot of time meeting with us to help us formulate this staffing plan, and Mike is a great advocate for his members, but he's also an advocate for students, and people don't see behind the scenes what he does do for students, and he cares about the community as well. So I do want to personally thank Mike for the time that you spent helping us sort all of this out. But if there are any questions from the committee on any of these 3 issues. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Galho. School committee reports or requests? Hearing none, we'll move on to the By Mr. Marciano.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. De Silva. Any questions on the consent agenda? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion. We have no old business. Moving on to new business. Approval of the residency officer contract. Entertain a motion.
Motion made.
Second.
Motion by Mr. De Silva, seconded by Mr. Marciano. And Mr. Pollock. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, approval of the school to career coordinator contract.
Motion to approve?
Motion by Mrs. Picard, seconded by Mr. Marciano. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. This is third reading of the service animals school policy.
Motion to approve?
Motion by Mrs. Picard, seconded by Mr. De Silva. Questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Approval to the amendment to the kindergarten early admission policy.
So I have a question about this one, because to my knowledge, there's been no subcommittee meeting to make an amendment, and I don't see any track changes to even understand what the amendment's for, and there is a spelling error in the policy. So I'm just not clear on how that got on the agenda.
Mrs. Seisinger, can you provide any clarification?
We met as a team with the early childhood coordinator because some of the criteria changed based on the assessments that we're currently using. So we just wanted to provide some of, just some clarifications on that. That second page mainly is the piece that changed a little bit.
So my recommendation, Superintendent Goho and Chairman Pilata, would be that we'd have to have a policy committee meeting. If it's procedural, then it should not be in the policy. And then we can, because we've seen that some of our policies do that, and we need to fix it as it comes up. So my suggestion would be to review the policy, make sure the correct language is in the policy, and the procedure information that would be things like screeners come out, because they don't need to be in policy. But we have to have 3 reads of that when we
Language
change
changes
it.
in the policy? Were there language changes in the policy?
No, we did not change any language in the policy itself. What we changed was some of the criteria in the assessments and the scores.
Yeah, the policy committee would have to review that to submit that proposal.
Yeah, and it's a point well taken. Any policy changes they should, when they're placed on the agenda before the school committee, it would be good to highlight the track changes, or track the changes that have been made to the policy, so that it can be discerned readily what it was that was changed. So we're going to refer that to the policy subcommittee. Thank you.
Next item, the approval of the textbooks from Maryville Elementary.
Motion to
Sorry.
approve?
Yeah, second that.
Motion by Mrs. Picard, second by Mr. De Silva. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item F, approval of removal of the library books from Maryville Elementary School.
So moved?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Picard, seconded by Mrs. De Silva. Questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Also, we're looking for approval of the state education funding formula resolution. This is a resolution similar that was submitted to us by other school districts. Okay, motion by Mr. Marciano, seconded by Mr. De Silva.
To whom are we sending this? State?
We'll send this to Mr. Duffy, who coordinates all this information and then submits the districts to the legislature.
Perfect.
Oh, second?
Motion by Mr. Marciano and seconded by Mrs. Picard and Mr. De Silva. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to item 12, approval of bills.
Question.
Andriozzi.
Mr. Gonzalez, I'd just like to ask you a question on page 134 of our packet. It would be items number 74 and 75. Could you tell me what they are? They just say Lowe's, January and February.
I'm sorry. What was the question?
Yeah, Mr. Gonzalez, line number 74 and 75, they say January 2019 and February 2019. One's 1,800, one's 1,700. I'd just like to know what they are.
Those are monthly bills that came in from Lowe's, and I don't have the detail of exactly that expenditure in front of me, but I can get back to you.
So I'm going to ask a question, and I'd just like to know if it's a yes or a no. Is that a credit card? Yes or no?
I believe so.
So you believe that is a credit card from Lowe's?
That's correct.
Thank you. Just want to be sure that it's a credit card from Lowe's, because I thought we did away with credit cards. I'm a little confused. I mean, we're making statements out in the public that we have no credit cards, and yet we have a credit card. So is there any other way we can do business with Lowe's without a credit card, or do we need to have a credit card with Lowe's?
I believe these credit cards are integral to our operations. They're primarily used by our maintenance support staff, and in most circumstances, they are for emergency purposes, so that they can fix problems that occur in the buildings.
To Mr. Andriosi's point, Providence being the biggest district, we do not use credit cards. We use purchase orders to ensure, and again, I realize that people are concerned about efficiency, but in a way to protect taxpayer dollars, it was also my understanding that all credit cards were removed. So that is a concern. And again, while people are concerned about getting what they need, I'm also concerned about taxpayer dollars. And if I was told there's no credit cards and there are in fact credit cards, I too have concerns about that.
So, Mr. Andriozzi, you said that there was a recommendation to eliminate credit cards. Was that what the previous committee?
I believe it was from the previous committee, and I believe it's also a, I'm going to use the word mandate from the mayor, who has stated that there are no credit cards in use, and yet we have credit cards in use, and I don't want that to be out there that we're using credit cards when I believe we made a mandate not to use them.
My understanding was that we asked all credit cards be collected. Maybe, and this was principals, and is it? I'm not sure if it's because maintenance is shared with the town. If there's confusion, but the mayor's chief of staff also said that they don't have the credit card. So then I don't know where the confusion lies.
So I have some clarifying information, Mr. Chairman. So we discussed this morning at our staff meeting with all the information that hit yesterday. And so just to get some clarification, I asked this question, and Jimmy, correct me if I'm wrong. Same thing, Ronnie, if I'm wrong. So I think the confusion was that because the facilities director is a merged position, we knew that there were credit cards with Lowe's and Home Depot. But I think the understanding was, or the thought was, that because it's a merged position, that those credit cards were on the municipal side and not the school department side. So we had this meeting today to clarify this, and Mr. Feroli does have a credit card for Home Depot and Lowe's for the school department, and a credit card for Home Depot and Lowe's for the municipal department. So two accounts for the two numbers for the school department, two numbers for the municipal, for the town. Am I correct on that, Mr. Feroli? And other credit cards.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Jimmy,
could you come up and
mind
say
just
that?
come to the podium? So again, I sought to clarify this today And what came of it was that there are credit cards. Home Depot and Lowe's are the two, and there is a separate credit card from Home Depot and Lowe's for the school department, and a credit card for Home Depot and Lowe's for the town as well, in addition to other credit cards on the municipal side that Jimmy referenced, but I'm not really sure what they are.
Cards, the only way they'll take those accounts is with a card, and the only two cards that we have is for Lowe's and Home Depot. That's it. And we can't use we can't use them anywhere else, or we can't charge at Lowe's or Home Depot.
Yeah, Mrs. Picard?
So what happens with the state bidding if, for example, we go over the 5,000 with the credit card because we didn't realize it was 500 here and 300 here and 200 here, and then we total by the end of the year and it's $6,500? Then what happens with the statewide bidding process?
My understanding of the statewide bidding process is one purchase for that amount of money. One purchase, not a conglomerate over a period of time.
That is not my understanding. My understanding of the statewide bidding is that if one school, so in Providence, if I have one school that spent $4,900 and another school who spent $4,900, I now am in violation if I did not go out for a request for bid. That is the way it was that we were trained. So if that is not correct, then that'll save me a lot of red tape in Providence. But I just want to make sure we have clarification.
Individual purchase. If it's over 5,000 for individual purpose, we definitely have to go for a bid, an RFP.
Right, that's one bid. But what I'm saying is, my understanding through the state is that, so if Stephen only cost us $3,800 and Birchwood cost us $3,800, you're already over. It's not. You can. It is.
Individual schools.
That is not my understanding.
Well,
Ben, you're the legal representation.
Why don't you get
State law.
get it done. I mean,
I also have a question when you're done.
So you're both right. So the statute says that if a purchase, state statute, if you're over $5,000 for a purchase, that has to go out to bid, and you can't disaggregate a purchase into smaller purchases to evade the bid statute.
Correct.
But if Jim is buying on an individual basis from time to time, that those don't qualify as a $5,000 bid. I think you have to analyze what's being purchased over what period of time. For instance, if we needed to buy toilet paper, and we decided to buy toilet paper from Lowe's a roll at a time, but we knew, in fact, we needed a lot more toilet paper than a roll, that would be a good example of disaggregating a bid for the purpose of evading the statute. But if
I'm thinking like painting, as an example, right? So if I'm painting Stephen Only School, and then I'm painting Birchwood, and then I'm painting Ritchie, and then I'm painting Maryville, and at the end of the year it's over the 5,000, couldn't that also be seen as us trying to manipulate the bidding process?
no, because we use all our paint vendors come off the state master price agreement, so that trumps everything. Sherwin-Williams, Lowe's, Easton Paint is all on the state master price agreement for paint.
So I know that Ron talked about the purchase orders and being able to inventory the paint as an example. So are you saying that when you do purchase the paint, we can distinguish which paint is for the school and how much we've used, and then the town would have what
Yes,
paint
we
they
have
have
two
for their
accounts.
buildings?
Everybody we do business with is two accounts. And every time we do it, we put what school, what building, and what we did on every slip. Both town and schools.
So I also have a question, Dr. Pollard, if I may.
Mr. Andriosi?
So that, again, is my question, and I've been asking it each month now for the last 4 months, is how we segregate what we're purchasing to the schools. And I've been getting an answer every month that it's segregated by number. Now I'm being told that I have somebody walking around with 2 credit cards, one for the municipal side and one for the school side. So how do I know what is being purchased on each credit card for the municipal side and what is being purchased for the school side? As well as, I'm going to ask this other question, is Mr. Ferroli the only person in the maintenance division for the school department that has a credit card, or are there multiple cards that are floating around out there? If Mr. Ferroli is not around and we have an emergency and we need something, is there another card somewhere that someone can use, or do we have to circle up Mr. Ferroli and have him go do it? So that's another question that I'd like to ask.
Yeah, we have, my assistants have one, and we also have them on the town side, just for those 2 accounts.
So again, so now we went from 0 credit cards to 2 in your pocket to now we have more than 2. So we have more people with credit cards. So it's not just you, it's your assistant walking around with a credit card as well. So we went from 0 to 2 to multiples. And I thought it was brought up at a past school committee meeting that all credit cards were to be turned in and ceased and desisted, for better words. And I don't understand why it's continuing. And I keep asking each month. I can see where the Lowe's is being used, and I ask and I ask and I ask, and now I've reached the point where, again, we're being thrown under the bus that we're not supposed to be using credit cards, and we're doing the wrong thing all the time, when in fact someone's walking around without our knowledge using a card again.
How are we gonna
Okay,
get this
so
done?
we're in a position where the previous school committee voted to eliminate credit cards based on what occurred during the summer. Is that correct? Thank you. I guess the next question is, I assume that there's no policy to guide the use of credit cards within the school department.
That's an excellent point. One of the things I wanted to add was the interim finance director, Dina Dutremble, when I sort of transitioned with her, said, obviously this is bad timing to even discuss this issue, but there is a valid use of appropriately controlled and policied credit cards that districts will save a significant amount of money if there are credit cards for certain purchases and policies to govern their use, which we do not have.
Right.
So Jimmy, so she talked about making a series of recommendations to us, which didn't occur, about having credit cards or reinstituting credit cards, and then having the policy committee and the school committee develop policies around them. In fact, when we had a discussion this morning, Jimmy, if you can, you talked about the policies that are around the credit cards on the town side as being quite effective. So if you could just give us a synopsis of how it works on the town side.
But we have one on the town side. We buy Amazon, we buy stuff online. We save a lot of money, significantly a lot of money, if we don't need it in an emergency. It's locked up in the safe. You go in, you have to write a purchase order. They sign it, use the card, put it back in the safe.
So the town has a policy for credit cards. Okay, so let's utilize that policy.
I would suggest that we get a copy of the town policy, and if the school committee is in agreement, take a look at that policy and adopt it for the school district, so we're all on the same page.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the school committee, policy committee take a look at that and bring it back, and if it's appropriate, obviously, we would concur with that.
About the current credit cards, so Jimmy, you said that at the town side, they're signed out and they're left in the safe. Is that the same for the school department side?
We don't have one like that. Our Lowe's cards we use the same way for the town as we do here. They say, Joe, we were talking earlier about a general credit card to buy stuff on Amazon and stuff, which we don't have. School department does not have.
Oh, okay. So the one that you have for Lowe's and Home Depot.
Yes.
Where is that kept?
My pocket.
So, but in the town side, it's kept in a safe?
My pocket.
Okay, so the Lowe's and Home Depot card for the town is kept in your pocket, not in the safe. But the policy you explained doesn't, only for Amazon?
Was for a general credit card, like MasterCard, not the Lowe's and Home Depot card.
So the municipal credit card.
Home and Lowe's Depot, both sides.
For the municipal and the school department, the Lowe's and Home Depot are kept with you?
Yes, unless we want to get a bigger purchase, then we use that other card. That card you have to go to town hall and get.
So town hall has credit cards, and they have a policy regarding the use of their credit cards. Okay, so that's something new. So now we have credit cards, and we don't have a policy around our credit cards. So how do we make this right?
I think we get a copy of the town's policy, give it to our policy committee, let them review it, see if it fits our needs. If we need to tweak it, we tweak it. But we need to have a policy to give us some guidelines. And I guess my question relative to that would be, I would assume the credit card just says North Providence School Department,
Yes,
but somebody is assigned a signature.
yes.
So that signature is someplace within the policy. Like, how does Lowe's know that Frank Pilate is not going to use the credit card? If I go use the credit card at Lowe's and I sign off, would Lowe's accept that? Or are they going to
No,
accept a
individual
certain
names.
signature?
Yeah, individual names.
They're going to accept, they have a signature on file?
Yes.
So you're saying that you have one in your pocket, and your assistant has one in your pocket, so those two signatures are the only two signatures that are allowed to use the Lowe's credit card?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Ms. Andriozzi, just for your original question, I just found out today, I think the confusion was that because the facilities position is a merged position, that the credit cards that were out there and they're being used for Lowe's and Home Depot, we knew they existed. I think we were under the assumption that they were strictly municipal. And then the items got subdivided to municipal and school department as they were purchased and appeared on the bills as such. So today is when I found out this morning that no, there are two accounts, two different numbers, two at Home Depot, one for the school department, one for municipal, one at, and another two at Lowe's, one for the school department, one for municipal. And we just found this out this morning. I asked the question to have it explained. So I think it was just simply misunderstanding, but good points, good questions. Thank you.
Okay, I think this was a good discussion because I think we could tighten up the process relative to credit cards and the use of credit cards. So the motion by Mr. Marciano, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Marciano, is to acquire a copy of the policy from the town relative to the use of credit cards, provide that to our policy subcommittee, have our policy subcommittee review that, and then come back to the committee for a recommendation.
That's correct.
I second that.
Okay, second by Mr. Andriozzi. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Jim. Any other questions relative to the bills? Okay, hearing none, accept the motion to approve the bills.
Motion made.
Motion by Mr. De Silva,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Marciano. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 11, sorry, I bypassed that, use of property. Chair will entertain a motion for use of property.
Move passage.
Second. And discussion.
Motion by Mr. Marciano, seconded by Mr. De Silva. Discussion.
Just a couple of things. It's true that the high school is not being used this summer because of repairs. And we've always used the high school, recreation has used the high school. And is it my understanding that they're using Birchwood this year? I think I saw that here.
Yeah, don't hold me to the specifics, but because of the fire alarm system that's being,
That's my understanding.
yeah, I think it's Birchwood. All of the programs are being farmed out to various schools.
So the recreation department will be doing, and you don't specifically know what they're doing. I know they've done basketball and they've done gymnastics, but your academic programs here, they're being housed at Ritchie.
Ritchie.
We approved that last month, I think.
Ritchie.
Okay. And I'm looking at Sunset League. It says North Providence High School. We know that's the high school field. So we know that, we had that conversation last month. So as long as that's being, going through Babe Ruth League and all that, they'll have to work that out, not come back here next month and say, we all have approval. They have to work that out. And then the last one is Kids Club has a summer program at Wayland, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. through the summer. Do they just use the gym?
I'm not familiar with the program. I can find out.
Okay. I mean, I'm not trying to hold it up. That seems extensive. 7 a.m. to 6 in the morning, 6 at night. Yeah. And how does that interfere or affect our stagger? Okay. All right. Perfect. Thank you.
Mrs. Picard?
So just to know, I noticed they're doing the active shooter drills during the spring break. Last year, there were a couple of shells left back in Greystone that, so I just want to make sure that the custodians are aware of the dates and that there's a good cleanup, because of course it caused an alarm for some of our parents when they went back to school and a child brought in a shell. So I just want to make sure that we're thoughtful about the cleaning of that area.
That's a good point. Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Request to address the committee, we have none. Item 14, pending business, we have no pending business. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Mr. Marciano, seconded by Mrs. Picard. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Do you think if I got it? Just